I'm Tim Miser, Associate Editor for Power Engineering Magazine. I just got out of a session called Environmental Regulations, Update and Compliance. I'm here with Block Andrews, who's a professional engineer with Burns and McDonnell. Block talked this morning about alternative closure schedules for CCR compliance. Block, thanks for taking a minute with us.
Thanks, Tim.
So Block, talk to me about the various environmental regulations. How do they interplay with one another? CCR rule, the effluent limitation guidelines. Does solving one problem create another problem? Do these rules ever war with one another? Do they conflict with one another?
Good question, Tim. Actually, they do. So anytime that you're looking at your facility, you should look at everything that applies to you, and that can be air, water, and waste. So some things that you did on the air side may be a product that gets in your water stream that now is being heavily regulated, and thus you have to do something about that particular waste stream or constituents associated with it. So absolutely, all three of those media are interrelated.
So how do the new reporting requirements associated with some of these rules affect the daily duties of power producers? If we're working towards a world in which data is available real time and ultra transparently, doesn't that put an onerous burden on power producers as they're trying to keep up with the paperwork, so to speak?
Yeah, Tim, it absolutely does. And for example, with the new CCR rule, we would really suggest that you do some type of quality assurance program that lists the steps of what you have to do, who has to do it, when it has to be done. And so that can be a relatively complex item because on that particular rule, you could be dealing with the individuals at the power plant, you could be dealing with corporate environmental, corporate engineering, and even communications folks, because the new CCR rule has a requirement for contacts, and so that contact could be getting calls from the public or environmental groups, and so they need to also be involved. So it's a whole list of people that have to be involved, and any type of quality assurance program should try to encompass all those people and their roles and responsibilities for it.
So how will the new CCR rules affect impoundments? What factors are going to play into pond closures?
Well, the first thing on your pond is you have to make a determination of whether it meets EPA's lined or unlined requirements. And if a pond is lined by EPA definition, the requirements are much less onerous than if you're an unlined pond. And I don't know the exact percentage of unlined ponds, but the vast majority of ponds are probably going to fall under the unlined category. And for those unlined ponds, they have a series of tests essentially to pass. And if they don't pass those tests, then that pond, you'll have to see sluicing to that pond and begin closure on it. So we expect that a majority of ponds are going to be impacted by the CCR rule.
So Block, talk to me a little bit about alternative closure schedules. What criteria must be met to qualify for an alternative closure schedule?
Yeah, Tim, EPA has written some words around it, but it's not really clearly defined how far you have to go on these type things. And so, for example, you can have to demonstrate that there's no other alternative to this, but after that, the words are silent. And so actually I was at an early CCR meeting with an EPA representative and asked them, well, what criterion should you consider? Because cost is not one of those criterions. So are you looking at a facility that's 100 miles away? I mean, does that meet the requirement? It seems that you have to take a reasonable and logical approach to taking a look at these alternatives for a trigger that stops sluicing. And so I believe documenting alternative compliance schedules, including the permitting, Public Service Commission approvals, and those type things when you're developing that schedule need to go in, because those are real world things that you have to do. And interestingly enough, probably the same folks that are going to be challenging you in court are also going to get a bite at the apple of challenging any of the permitting or Public Service Commission approval that they're going to try to do. So they can make the schedule longer themselves, actually. So I think that, just having good documentation and starting early, I would say, would be the really big things to do.
So, talk to me about impoundment closures. What kind of holistic considerations should be taken when you're considering having to close one of these ponds?
Yeah, Tim, the water balance within a plant is extremely important, and because a lot of these ponds may be kind of a various recipient of waste streams. So you may have boiler blowdown, you may have FGD blowdown, ash, all going to the same pond. And so taking a look at the water balance of defining what goes where currently, the amounts, the constituents associated with that can better help us try to take a look at, is there reuse opportunities that we can take a look at? Thus, if you have to get rid of that pond, there's still places for your water to go or be used in the process.
I see. Well, Block, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to educate us on these important issues. For Power Generation Week and Power Engineering Magazine, I'm Associate Editor Tim Miser.